On the news tonight, IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu sues the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency over role in torture and detention in Kenya, demands 20 billion naira compensation. Appeal Court restores Binani and Boachi as APC governorship candidates for Adamawa and Taraba states. And Nigeria's economic growth slows to 2.25% in third quarter of 2022. It's a pleasure to have you here on News Now. I am Folashade Ogurinde. The leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has sued the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ahmed Abubakar, for imprisoning him in Kenya for 8 days before his extradition to Nigeria. The special counsel to IPOB leader Aloy Ejimako said the suit was prompted by new evidence gathered implicating the DG beyond what he described as infamous extraordinary rendition. According to the suit, the court gave Abubakar 14 days to appear or be represented in court, adding that failure to show up would mean that judgment would be given in the DG's absence. This comes just a few days after Kanu's 20 billion naira suit against the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, was thrown out by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Still on judicial matters, the Court of Appeal sitting in Yola set aside the High Court rulings nullifying the primaries that produced Emmanuel Bacha and Aishatu Binani as the All Progressives Congress governorship candidates for Taraba and Adamawa states, respectively. The unanimous decision of the three-man panel led by Justice Tani Hassan set aside the judgments of the lower court on Thursday and ordered that their names be resubmitted to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) as APC governorship candidates for both states. In September, Justice Simon Amobeda of the Federal High Court in Jalingo, the Taraba state capital, sacked Boacha after a petition by ex-aspirant David Kente. Similarly, last month, a Federal High Court sitting in Yola nullified APC primary that produced Binani as the party's governorship candidates for Adamawa after a former chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC), Nuhu Ribadu, had dragged Binani and INEC before the High Court, alleging vote buying and illegal delegates list at the primary. However, the appellate court on Thursday set aside both judgments, restoring the candidature of Boacha and Binani. Well, to speak more on this, Liberos Oshoma, legal expert, joins me now. Thank you very much for joining us. A month ago, the Taraba and Adamawa state had no APC governorship candidates, but the Court of Appeal has reversed this decision. Can you give us more insight into this development?
Yeah, thank you. You see, it's what I call, first and foremost, a ruling party syndrome, where every ruling party, you always have, at every primary, you always have this factionalization, and factionalization will lead to, election petitions such as this. In 2019, we saw it happen. Pre-2019, if you remember, before 2015 election, he was a recurring decimal with PDP governorship aspirant. But matter goes to a head in 2015 when the APC had to, lose completely two states. I think 2019, yes, Zamfara and Rivers State, over issues that had to do with candidature. And now we're seeing it playing out again. We saw the case of the Akpabio case in Akwa Ibom. We saw the Machida in Yobe State, and a governorship candidate in Taraba and Adamawa State. Basically, even the court in most times had been also cautioned not to unnecessarily interfere in the affairs of political parties. But when the procedures for nominating candidates in the primaries are not followed, the court also is always called question to look at the processes if all the provisions of Section 84 of the Electoral Act had been complied with. That was what
Sorry
happened.
to interrupt at this point, but some would say this is politics of power, as the Federal High Court did not find them worthy, but now the Court of Appeal has made a reversal. Well, would you say this is politics playing out, and what does this say of the country's judicial system?
Yeah, it's basic for me. You know, I will not begin to, look at it from the prism of politics once the matter is in court, even though definitely there are one or two interferences here and there that can be alleged. But like I said, if the provisions of the law, Electoral Act, Section 84, 1 to 14 are not complied with, the court also, even INEC in some cases, had a right to write a report to say, we did not monitor these primaries. And once that report is missing, we have seen it also in some APC matters in Cross River State. Once that report is missing, what the court will eventually do is to say that since this report it means that the primaries was not validly conducted. So in this same vein, these are some of the issues that played out. But the Court of Appeal in its wisdom had heard otherwise. At the Federal High Court is a panel of one man. At the Court of Appeal is a panel of 3. At the Supreme Court is a panel of 5. So like we say, 2 good heads are better than 1. So that's why once the matter happens, usually for some of us, we look beyond the Court of Appeal and we look up to the Supreme Court. No matter how the Supreme Court look at it, that's when we now begin to say, yes, the court has spoken, and then now begin to look at the rationale for the decision so taken. But until that is done,
it's a wait and see situation, and we'll see
yes.
How this plays out. That's if it escalates to the Supreme Court. But Liberos Oshoma, a legal expert, thank you very much for your time and your contribution. The federal government says it has recovered $1 billion being looted funds since the inception of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration till date. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, will disclose this while briefing State House correspondents at the end of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting, affirmed that the recovered assets had been deployed to various sectors of the economy, including poverty alleviation. The AGF also expressed government's concern over sundry cases of budget padding, describing the development as worrisome. Our correspondent Mir Kanu has more in this report.
President Muhammadu Buhari's administration is seeking better ways to tackle corruption, especially in the area of misappropriation of funds in government-owned institutions. The Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, who disclosed this while briefing State House correspondents at the end of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting, said successes have been recorded in blocking leakages. While revealing that the preceding government recorded only 109 convictions before 2015, Malami said the Buhari administration has convicted over 3,000 offenders and recovered about $1 billion to date, adding that the new anti-corruption strategy will strengthen the war against corruption between 2022 and 2026.
But today, we are recording successes in terms of convictions to the extent that a single agency of government, if you take, for example, the EFCC, within a year, I'm talking of 2022, we have recorded over 3,000 convictions. The government of President Muhammadu Buhari has succeeded in recovering around $1 billion from its inception to date.
Speaking on the issue of budget padding, Malami said the federal government is closely monitoring the budget defense sessions at the National Assembly and decried the menace allegedly carried out by ministries, departments and agencies.
Budget padding, as far as the development of the nation is concerned, is indeed a serious issue that has the capacity, just like corruption, to set our development back. And I think it is indeed a great source of concern, and I share your perception in being concerned about the budget funding arrangement.
Also speaking at the briefing, the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, revealed FEC approved the augmentation of over 14 billion naira on the contract sum for the completion of the Kano Western Bypass, propping it up from 22 billion naira to about 37 billion naira.
Council considered and approved the augmentation, which was for 14.095 billion, to revise the contract sum from 22 billion to 36.869 billion. Some of the items covered by the augmentation include the old amount of the VAT, the increase from 5 to 7%, the need to construct a flyover at Dawanu International Market interchange.
The minister also reiterated the commitment of the President Buhari administration in completing all projects before the end of its tenure, revealing that the completion of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is being delayed due to the construction of drainage systems along the highway by the Oyo state government. Mary Kanu, TV360, Abuja.
The senators asked the National Council on Privatization and the Bureau of Public Enterprise to suspend indefinitely the proposed concession of the 700-megawatt station in Niger State pending the conclusion of an investigation by its Committee on Power. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Power, Gabriel Suswam, explained that it will be unacceptable to concession the power plant without ensuring accountability and proper management of unsettled external loans tied to the project. Federal lawmakers, including the Senate President Hamid Lawan, supported his stance, pointing out the failure of the privatization of the power sector.
The adequacy or otherwise of selection criteria for the concessionaire and to generally establish whether the proposed concession of the Gero hydropower plant is an exercise that would ensure that government gets the deserved value for funds expended on this project and report back to the Senate within 2 weeks.
Looking at the amount that has been spent in that project, and looking at the fact that even if that project is completed 100% today, we do not have the capacity to be able to take all the power that it will generate into the national grid.
To suspend indefinitely the proposed concession of the 700 megawatts Ngeru hydroelectric power plant in Niger State, pending the conclusion of investigation by the Senate Committee on Power and the subsequent adoption of the decision of the Senate based on the findings and recommendations of the committee. Those in favor prior to say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate, thank you very much.
The Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Pauline Tallen, has said that 34 states in Nigeria have domesticated the Child Rights Act, which was enacted by the federal government to reduce child abuse in the country. The minister disclosed this while featuring on the weekly briefing organized by the Presidential Communication Team in Aso Rock Villa. Tallen further explained that domestication of the law would increase child protection and also contribute to the reduction of gender-based violence in the country. Tallen will identify the low number of women in politics and other leadership positions as a major setback to the country's development, called for 50% affirmative action for women, saying the usual 35% is no longer tenable.
Today, we have 34 states that have domesticated both the VAP Act and the Child's Rights Act, as against 9 and 12 when I assumed office. But today I'm proud to say that with aggressive advocacy across the states, all the 36 states I went around, appealed to them. Most times I even go into the House of Assembly to address the State House of Assembly with the permission of the Speaker. I did that in Uyo. In fact, I remained there until they passed it. The law was passed in my presence in Oyo State. So Oyo did very well. Bauchi, the same thing. I was in the House to address them. And all these states said this is the first time a woman has taken an advocacy on such a very important issue to the State Assembly. They appointed 7 women in the Federal Executive Council, and all the 6 women plus myself have not failed Nigerians. The 6, all the 7 members of the female Federal Executive Council are doing very well. Participation of women in nation building, all spheres of life. In fact, we are not only demanding for 35%, but Nigerian women deserve 50% in all spheres. It's happening in other countries. It is not that Nigeria, we are not begging, but we deserve it.
Paul Tohib Adisa has emerged the best overall graduating student of the Yaba College of Technology at the 34th convocation ceremony of the institution. A total of 7,554 graduates from 3 academic sessions between 2018 and 2021 were awarded ordinary national diplomas and higher national diploma certificates and prizes on Thursday. Out of the number, 560 graduated with distinction and 5,921 with upper credits. Our correspondent, Simisola Adigun, has more details in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic-driven school closures, which disrupted the traditional academic calendars of all institutions in Nigeria, has brought together 7,554 graduates at the 34th convocation ceremony of Nigeria's premier tertiary institution, the Yaba College of Technology. Parents, graduates and principal officers of the college were on ground for the award ceremony. Giving his last address as rector of the college, Obafemi Omokungbe railed out achievements made by the institution during his 5-year tenure. While congratulating the students for the successful completion of their programs, Omokungbe expressed gratitude to them for their support.
The focal point of the administration was aimed at drivers on administrative restructuring, academic standard and enhancement, staff and students' welfare, internally generated revenue, physical and infrastructural development of the college, and the establishment of an endowment fund. We strive through the tenure of 5 years to remain faithful to these beacons as a basis for how posterity will see us.
Graduating with a cumulative grade point average of 3.92 out of a possible 4.0, Paul Tohib Adisa emerged the overall best student for the 2020-2021 academic session and was awarded a cash prize of 500,000 naira and other gifts. Adisa encouraged the graduating students to excel in their various fields and remain steadfast in achieving their set goals.
I knew I can do it, but at first when I came in, it was very challenging because I didn't do my handy year. So I have been to the Polytechnic of Ibadan, where I graduated with distinction as well, so before crossing to this place. So when I came here, I faced a lot of challenges. Some of them is the financial constraint, because at some point I felt like withdrawing because I had to sponsor myself during the course of the program.
Other graduates who couldn't contain their excitement expressed optimism about the future.
It has been amazing. In fact, I would say, like normally, we all know about Tech is a very wonderful school. It's not been easy. Try during exam periods, we have to read like back to back, and exams are like 2 weeks back to back. We have to read very, very, very hard. So I'm really grateful to God.
What future holds is to explore more, because there are a lot of opportunities ahead. Gather as much experience as I can in my field, further as much as I can, master's, PhD, and future is bright, definitely.
The Minister of Education and Guest of Honor, Adamu, who was represented by the Director of General Services, urged the school management to expand its internal revenue sources following the successful launching of the 50 billion naira endowment fund. He also called for increased interaction with the international community, which will help technical level education compete favorably with other forms of tertiary learning. Simisola Adigun, TV360, Lagos.
Well, we'll take a break here, but still to come, China's COVID-19 infections hit record high as economic outlook darkens. Details of the story and more right after this break. Welcome back to News Now. Here is a recap of some of our top stories tonight. The leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, sued the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ahmed Abubakar, for imprisoning him in Kenya for 8 days before his extradition to Nigeria. The special counsel to the IPOB leader, Aloy Ejimako, said the suit was prompted by new evidence gathered implicating the DG beyond what he described as infamous extraordinary rendition. We also told you that the Court of Appeal sitting in Yola has set aside the High Court rulings nullifying the primaries that produced Emmanuel Boacha and Aishatu Binani as the All Progressives Congress governorship candidates for Taraba and Adamawa states respectively. The unanimous decision of the three-man panel led by Justice Tani Hassan set aside the judgments of the lower court on Thursday and ordered that their names be resubmitted to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) as APC governorship candidates for both states. Well, in case you missed any of our news bulletin or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we are TV360 Online. China has reported record high COVID-19 infections on Thursday, with cities nationwide imposing lockdowns. Mass testing and other curbs are also feeling frustration and darkening the outlook for the world's second largest economy. The resurgence of infections nearly 3 years after the pandemic emerged in central city of Wuhan casts doubt on investor hopes for China to ease its rigid zero COVID-19 policy soon, despite recent targeted measures. The curbs are taking a toll on locked-down residents as well as output as factories, including the world's biggest iPhone plant, which has been rocked by clashes between workers and security personnel. We'll take a breather and return with more stories. To stay with us.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On TV360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
TV360, dissecting the issues.
Welcome back. Simi Saladigo is on standby to bring us up to speed on the latest in the world of business. Simi, what's the latest?
Thank you very much for that, Shade. Now, Nigeria's gross domestic product has grown by 2.25% year-on-year in the third quarter of 2022, down from 3.54% in the second quarter, marking the slowest growth since the COVID-19 pandemic. This is according to the National Bureau of Statistics in its latest GDP report for the third quarter of 2022. According to the NBS, the slow growth is attributable to the base effect of the recession and the challenging economic conditions that have impeded productive activities. On a year-on-year basis, the NBS said the third quarter of 2022 growth rate decreased by 1.78 percentage points from the 4.03% growth rate recorded in the corresponding quarter in 2021 and 1.29 percentage points relative to 3.54% recorded in the second quarter of 2022. We'll take a short break here and be back with stock market report. Stay with us. For the fourth time this week, Nigeria's equities markets closed in the positive region, rising by 0.81% at the close of trading on Thursday. Consequently, the benchmark all-share index and market capitalization increased as well to 44,604 basis points and 25.3 trillion naira. Now, Airtel Africa and Boa Foods led the high bullish market with a combined gain of 1,413 naira. The performance chart shows that a total of 138 million volume of shares valued at over 2 billion naira were exchanged in 3,434 deals. It's the greens for our select foreign stock as well. The UK's FTSE, US Dow Jones and Japan's Nikkei traded high on Thursday, reversing earlier losses. That's the stock market report. Folashade, back to you.
Many thanks to Mr. Laff for that update. And now on the foreign scene, Uganda has recorded a drop in the number of new Ebola cases, with some districts going for at least 2 weeks without registering new infections, the country's health ministry officials have said. According to local media, authorities say Kampala, the capital, had not recorded new infections for at least 2 weeks. The development is a major sign the East African country is having a measure of success in efforts to combat its latest outbreak of the deadly hemorrhagic fever disease more than 2 months after it was declared. And now in sports, Bril Mbelo has scored against the country of his birth as Switzerland defeated Cameroon 1-0 to make a winning start to the World Cup campaign on Thursday. Mbelo struck 3 minutes into the second half as Switzerland secured a vital 3 points in a group that includes tournament favourites Brazil and Serbia. Cameroon have now lost their last 8 World Cup matches going back to 2002. And that's the size of a news bulletin. Many thanks for watching. I am Folashade Ogurinde. Bye for now.